I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. Before we jump into our agenda, I just wanted to make a few announcements. With the boundary now finalized, we have 14 new committee members we're welcoming tonight. 14. So welcome. The Air District is going to be scheduling an onboarding session for all of you in the next few weeks to bring you up to speed on what the committee's discussed so far. And please be on the lookout for that information. We do have a hard stop at 7:30 tonight because we have to be out of this room with the tables and chairs by 8. Yes? Can you turn up the microphone, please? A little bit? Better? Great. And we do have a full agenda. So in the interest of time, we are going to hold public comment until the end. And at that time, members of the public can make a comment on any of the agenda items. And we also have a certain amount of time allocated for committee member comments. One thing that some of the committee members in Shafter have been doing is submitting more detailed written comments that build on their verbal comments during the meetings. And if you decide to do that, please just email them to the Air District or send them by mail, and we'll make sure that the steering committee members receive it. Also, when we're making public comments, if someone has said something that you agree with, and you can just say you agree with what that person said, and Cynthia, who's taking our notes tonight, will make a note of that. And then finally, just a reminder, this is not the only opportunity we'll have to talk about some of these topics. The presenters will be returning at future times, so we will continue to have these discussions. And with that, I would like to introduce John Klassen from the Air District, who's the Program Director of Strategies and Incentives. Thanks.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Yes? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm John Klassen, Director of Strategies and Incentives from the Air District, and tonight I'm going to introduce the topic of community air monitoring and what we can possibly do here in South Central Fresno. I'm going to talk a bit about the elements that are required in the community air monitoring plan that we need to develop together over the coming months. I'm going to talk a bit about the air monitoring resources that we're developing that we can use here in South Central Fresno. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the things that we need to consider for placing equipment here in the community and some of the limitations of what we have as we think about this. So overall, once I get done with the presentation, we want to hear some feedback from the committee and then from the public when we're done with the meeting tonight on air monitoring, what your thoughts are about different questions that we're going to have for you about what this could look like here for South Central Fresno. So for this first slide here, just overall, as you're aware, those of you on the committee who've been involved in this process, part of AB 617 requires community air monitoring to happen for communities selected by CARB, which South Central Fresno is one of those communities, and this monitoring has to be in place by July 1st of this year, of 2019, so just a few months away, we need to have our network set up and ready to go. And this monitoring is going to supplement what already exists in the selected community. So there's already monitoring stations here in South Central Fresno. I'll go over those details in a little bit, but what we're going to do is add even more to what we already have down here. And the data we collect from the Community Air Monitoring Network is going to help develop and see through the Community Emissions Reduction Program, which we'll develop together as well. So as I mentioned, we're looking at developing a number of air monitoring platforms that we can use here in South Central Fresno. I'll go over those details. I'll talk a bit about how the community here can access the data that'll be collected from my air monitoring equipment down here. And additional local air monitoring networks will be planned and deployed in the future as subsequent communities get selected for AB 617. So as other areas of California are selected, we'll have other community networks established throughout the San Joaquin Valley. So as I mentioned, a community air monitoring plan must be developed as a part of AB 617, and getting feedback from the committee here is going to be a huge help in developing that plan that we're going to move forward with. There are 14 elements that are described in the CARB AB 617 blueprint that must be in this air monitoring plan that we need to describe in detail. And these elements are designed to help provide a process that results in action-oriented data that we're going to be collecting for the needs of the community. Some of the elements that I'll go over in a second go over quality control criteria, best practices for air monitoring, collaborative partnerships, how do we make sure the data is accurate that we're going to collect, and how will the public have access to the collected data. So this list here is a list of all of the elements that must be in this community air monitoring plan. And I'll just say a few notes about some of these here. One of the elements is community partnerships, which has to discuss how we establish the steering committee to inform the development of this plan, which we've already done that. We've established this committee. We have to have community-specific purpose for air monitoring, which will identify the pollutants of concern within the community, which we're working through together. It'll describe the scope of actions and what actions will be taken based on air monitoring data we collect. What are the air monitoring objectives for South Central Fresno? Okay, I'll slow down. Which will define when and where we will take measurements, which we'll talk more about tonight. The roles and responsibilities of air monitoring here in South Central Fresno, about what we're going to do, what CARB could possibly do, what the community could do. Talk about data quality objectives within our air monitoring plan, which is focused on looking at the data itself, how precise must it be, what the bias requirements are, sensitivity, monitoring methods and equipment, what exact type of equipment we could be using down here in South Central Fresno, what the measurement methods are, the monitoring areas, which we want to get feedback on that tonight about where we can place monitoring equipment down in this area, how it should be spread out and moved around possibly. Quality control procedures, we need to talk about how we can make sure our data is accurate and scientifically defensible. Share some details about how we need to compare our equipment versus more high precision standards. They need to be calibrated and taken care of properly. We also need to describe our data management process, how we're going to be collecting the data we collect, organizing the data we collect from the air monitoring equipment, how it's going to be managed and stored. Details about field measurements from what we'll be doing in the community network, which we'll need to touch on logbooks, chain of custody forms if we're sending samples to laboratories, how that's going to work, standard operating procedures, and so forth. Also, evaluating the effectiveness of our monitoring plan, which will outline a procedure for how we're going to look back at the original objectives from our air monitoring plan and make sure we're meeting those objectives and how we need to change things. Analyze and interpret the data, so we'll have to describe how we're going to analyze all the data that we'll be collecting from the equipment measured in South Central Fresno, comparing trends, looking at different sources, and finally communicating those results. How are we going to take all this data, put it together, communicate the results to the committee and to the community here going forward. So these are the 14 elements that we need to address in the air monitoring plan. And just in general, some of the goals of the air monitoring plan, we need to make sure our goals are clear and our objectives are clear, that it's obvious what we're doing with our community air monitoring plan. We need to describe the monitoring approach, make sure it's matching the information and the need with the appropriate technologies and scientific process that we're going to establish. We also need to develop a community air monitoring plan, and this will assist in guiding the air monitoring goals for South Central Fresno, and how this data will give us more community level data, which we can look at air quality trends here at the community level, different from looking at the regional level, which we do right now by the network that we have already established. And as I mentioned, the data that we collect here for our community network will help assist with the development of the community emission reduction program and its implementation going forward. So this map I'm showing now, this is a map of the current air monitoring network throughout the whole San Joaquin Valley, up in the Stockton area, going all the way down to Bakersfield, all the way even south of there to Lebec, which is almost in Los Angeles County. So a lot of sites here across the valley. We have about almost 40 air monitoring sites currently being operated here throughout the valley, and these sites are operated by the Air Pollution Control District, by the California Air Resources Board, National Park Service, and also some tribal nations operate some of the sites that are listed here. It may be a little hard to see on this map, but this shows you what pollutants are being measured at each site here across the valley. These measurements include ozone, NOx, carbon monoxide, PM10, PM2.5, toxics, meteorology, and PM2.5 speciation. This map is also available on our district website. If you want to look at it there, you can get a closer view of what's going on across the network. This next map here is showing the monitoring that we have here in the Fresno urban area. So we have 6 air monitoring sites currently operating in the Fresno area. Up on the top left-hand corner, we have our Fresno Sierra Sky Park site, up on Herndon Avenue by the Sierra Sky Park Airport. Thank you, Jamie. So for your reference, this site measures ozone and NOx and meteorology. Over on the top right-hand side is our Clovis air monitoring site. And this measures ozone, NOx, carbon monoxide, VOCs, PM10, PM2.5, and meteorology. Right in the center is Fresno Garland. This is the most expansive site that we have in the San Joaquin Valley, right in the middle of Fresno. This measures pretty much everything that could be measured in an air monitoring network. It measures everything that Clovis measures. It also does PM2.5 speciation. It measures toxics, sulfur dioxide. A lot goes on at Fresno Garland. So looking down at the bottom part of this map here, and let me just go to the next slide, you can get a closer view. This is showing the boundary we have for South Central Fresno. So there are 3 air monitoring sites currently operating in the area. So on the right, the middle right, is the Fresno Pacific air monitoring site. This is just outside the boundary on the east side. And this measures PM2.5 through a filter-based measurement. And right in the middle by Highway 99, that's our Fresno Foundry air monitoring site by 99 and Jensen Avenue. That site currently measures NO2 and meteorology, and we'll soon be adding carbon monoxide and PM2.5 to that site here later this year. So that's within the boundary already. And then the Fresno Drummond air monitoring site, which you can see a little bit lower there, measures ozone, NOx, PM10 through a filter-based method, and meteorology. This was brought up a couple of months ago by the committee, asking about where low-cost sensors are being operated in the Fresno area. So if you've looked at the Purple Air website, that's what this is from. This is showing a number of Purple Air sensors that are being operated down here in downtown Fresno, South Central Fresno area. And the Purple Air is continuing to grow, so there may be a few more operating now since I grabbed this image here. So a bit about the sites that are being operated here in the area. I already mentioned these sites a few slides ago, but I can give a little more detail. So the Fresno Drummond site, which I mentioned, has been operated by the Air District since 1984. That's near Jensen and Chestnut Avenues, and I already mentioned the pollutants that it measures, the measures that are listed here. The Fresno Foundry site has been operated by us since the year 2016. It's a fairly new site, and you can see what's being measured here. And as I mentioned, we'll be adding PM2.5 and carbon monoxide later this year. And then Fresno Pacific, just outside the boundary, which measures PM2.5. We've operated that since the year 2000. And the historical data for these air monitoring sites are available on CARB's website via that link that we show here on the slide, so you can take a look at that. This next slide it just gives a brief update on something we mentioned at our last meeting, how we were working to establish a PM2.5 monitor at Roosevelt High School. And so over the last few weeks, we worked with the administration at the high school. We got this monitor set up, and that's what the picture is showing here. This is our real-time PM2.5 instrument being operated now at Roosevelt. And that link here on the slide, you can go to that link and you can view the data in real time. So every hour this updates, you can see what's going on in the Roosevelt High School area. And we've been collecting this data since March 22nd. You can click back in time and look at data all the way back to March 22nd if you like to. And this will be updated going forward, so you can keep an eye on that. We also deployed a Purple Air sensor right next to this instrument, so we have a good comparison between Purple Air and this PM2.5 instrument to give us a nice data comparison. So a few notes on the accessibility of air monitoring data. One of the requirements that we have in AB 617 is to make sure that the data we collect here in South Central Fresno will be available to the public in real time. So CARB is developing what's called a statewide data portal, which will house and display air monitoring data not only for South Central Fresno, but also Shafter here in the valley and the other 8 selected communities across the state. So the data we collect here, you can go to that state portal, view the data in real time, it'll all be there for you. You'll be able to look at hourly data, hour by hour you can view what's going on. We'll also be validating air monitoring data, so it'll be pushed to CARB in real time, hour by hour, but we'll also be taking a close look at the data, take it through a QA, QC process to make sure it's accurate, that it's validated, and then we'll be uploading that data to the data portal as well, so you can grab that after the fact and have a better quality data set to look at. We may also be taking samples of the air through different methods and analyzing those where we don't get results in real time. We have to send those samples to a laboratory, and they have to analyze that. And it takes quite a bit of time. It could take months to get results from that, but those results will also be made available. That, of course, won't be in real time. It'll take a few months to get that processed, and those reports placed on the statewide data portal for people to look at. We are also planning to display the data we collect for South Central Fresno on our own district website in real time as well. So there'll be a way there for you to view data going on, the data being collected here in South Central Fresno, in addition to what will be displayed on the statewide data portal. So changing gears here, talking a bit about the resources that we're developing for the area. We're developing a number of air monitoring equipment and assets to use here in South Central Fresno. And the real goal of the equipment that we're trying to develop is to make sure it's portable, we can easily move it around, we can rapidly deploy it to different areas. Traditional air monitoring shelters can take a very long time to establish. They could take a number of years, actually, with all the permitting and construction that needs to happen. We don't want to go down that route with the equipment we're bringing in here. We want to make sure it's mobile. We can easily move it around to different areas, take various measurements, try to be as flexible as we can. The instrumentation that we're planning to use in the area is regulatory grade, which will produce high precision data. We want to make sure the operations that we're going to have here are going to be the most accurate as we can. Yes? Okay, I'm almost done. Yeah. So a bit of details on the assets we're developing. We are going to have a mobile, and for here in Shafter, we're going to have a mobile air monitoring trailer, which will be able to measure a lot of different things, which I'll detail here in a minute. Thank you. We're going to have a mobile air monitoring van that will be available for use here in South Central Fresno, which will be able to drive around and take measurements while it's moving if we want to do something like that, or it can take measurements in a stationary mode. We'll have more compact air monitoring systems available, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then we'll have some standalone PM 2.5 instruments that we can put throughout the area. These are a few pictures of what these look like. On the top left-hand side, that's just a standalone PM 2.5 instrument. This is similar to what's being operated at Roosevelt right now. At the bottom left-hand corner is an air monitoring trailer, which will be able to house a lot of equipment in there. And of course, it's on wheels, so we can move it around to different areas as we need to. The middle on the top, that's one of the more compact air monitoring systems that I mentioned. This is able to measure a lot of different pollutants all in a small compact unit, so pretty flexible, easy to use. And the bottom middle is another picture of the standalone PM 2.5 instrument. Then on the right-hand side is a picture of a mobile air monitoring van that we'll have for using here in South Central Fresno, where we can take measurements. If we park it somewhere, we can take measurements in a stationary mode or take measurements while we're driving around the area. So AB 617 requires that we measure both criteria and toxic pollutants in the area. So just a listing here of what we could be measuring for South Central Fresno. A number of gas pollutants that could be measured, and those include ozone, carbon monoxide, NO, NO2, and NOx, SO2, hydrogen sulfide, total volatile organic compounds, or we could speciate those as well to look at the differences. And for speciated VOCs, we could do that in real time, hour by hour, or we can take samples to a lab to get a fuller understanding of all the VOCs that are being collected in the air. There's also a number of particulate matter pollutants that we can measure here in the area, including PM10, PM 2.5, ultrafine PM, black carbon. We can speciate PM 2.5, which could potentially be done in real time or have samples sent to a laboratory to give us a full idea of what's happening. We could try to measure toxic particulate matter. So lots of options between gas pollutants and particulate matter pollutants that we could measure here in the area. And getting feedback from the steering committee and the public will be a big help to help us focus on what pollutants we should be measuring and where we should be placing our equipment. So just some recommendations for an initial network design of what we could do here in the area. As I mentioned, we have air monitoring already happening at 3 sites in the area: Fresno Drummond, Fresno Pacific, and Fresno Foundry air monitoring sites. We'll continue operations there, so that will still be going on. We'll have 1 air monitoring trailer to use here in the area to supplement that. We'll have an air monitoring van, as I mentioned, to use as well. We will have 1 to 2 of those compact multi-pollutant air monitoring systems, which can measure both gas pollutants and particulate matter pollutants. We will also have 2 to 3 standalone PM2.5 instruments we can place and spread out in the area. And also with the potential use of low-cost sensors if needed to help improve our spatial coverage of the area to see what's happening. And as you know, our resources will be limited here. We can't measure everything everywhere at the same time, so we'll need to think about where we should place equipment initially and talk about how we should move things around and how frequently they should move around to take measurements in different areas of the community. And just one recommendation is the air monitoring trailer, since this will be able to measure a number of different things. It may be a good idea to place that in one location and leave it there over the duration of this project, so we can get good longer-term trends of air pollution down here in South Central Fresno. It might be good to leave that in a fixed spot while we're moving other equipment and assets around to try to take measurements in different areas of the community. So last couple slides here. So just wanted to mention too, there are a number of factors we need to consider when we're thinking about where we should place air monitoring equipment. We can't just leave this equipment out in the middle of a field. It needs to be, we need to have permission from the landowner to start with. We need to make sure they're okay with us placing the equipment on their property. We have to work that out with the landowner. We have to establish a lease agreement with the property owner to make sure that that's okay. We have to make sure it's a very secure area where our equipment can be gated and secure and taken care of. There needs to be access to power for us to operate our equipment to make sure that that's operational. We have to think about proper monitoring and sighting of our equipment to make sure there are no obstructions, that the wind flow is correct, that we can capture air quality issues from all wind directions. So thinking about all of these things we need to be careful of. Really can somewhat limit where we can place things. We just need to be thoughtful about it, about the reality of some of these limitations and logistics that we need to think about. So last slide here, the questions that we have for you tonight that we'd like to get some feedback on. First one is, what pollutants and types of sources should we consider when we put together our community air monitoring plan for the area? What are your initial thoughts on where we should place our air monitoring equipment in the area? The trailer that I mentioned, if it's going to be in a long-term operation in one spot, what do you think is a good spot to place the trailer for the duration of the air monitoring program here? How frequently should our assets be moved around? Should it be in place for a quarter, 6 months, 1 year, and then move it to somewhere else in the community? What are your thoughts on the frequency? And last question is, what specific information can we provide to the committee here to help you give us feedback on these questions to help us put together a good design for the air monitoring plan for South Central Fresno? Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll open it up to a few questions, but really we want to start the discussion about your thoughts on these questions.
As I said here, I was writing down just questions, and I'm sorry I have 6, but that's what I have. But they're really easy to answer. First off, will you be coming back with a proposed plan, say in like 2 weeks? Because I can see that this committee needs to look at what the final plan is, and I don't want to wait a month. And it shouldn't be that hard to throw it together in 2 weeks and have us come back just to look at the plan and talk about it. That was the first thing. The second thing is, what is the line item budget for this portion of the greater whole of the plan as far as acquisition of new equipment? Does anybody know what that is?
For the budget, I don't have the number in front of me, but we have been allocated a pretty significant amount to be able to purchase these assets and to operate them in South Central Fresno.
What's your level of significance?
It's in the millions of dollars.
Millions of
And
dollars?
this equipment is not cheap. It's extremely expensive.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's in the millions. Is it 5 million? 10 million? I'm just curious.
I think the initial equipment that we have planned for the area, it's probably a cost of about $2 million.
2 million, okay, so it's a low budget. Will you be monitoring at the standards of the federal standards for air quality? And if not, why?
Do you mean, are we going to be comparing the data we collect against the federal standards?
No, are you going to be in full compliance with the federal standards?
With the equipment we're
stationary?
operating?
No, I want stationary, I don't want mobile. Mobile doesn't work for me.
Yeah, for the equipment we're operating for the area, they are up to federal standards. This is the highest grade regulatory equipment that's available.
Okay. And will all the monitoring stations be collecting and measuring all the elements for all, you know, the PM2s, NOx, everything, all the kit and caboodle?
So like I described, the air monitoring trailer has the most capacity to do all that. There's the most space in there. The air monitoring van will be a little more, there's not as much space inside the van, so it can't do as much. So it depends on the capacity of the equipment. So based on what I described, what we're planning, we're not going to be able to measure everything with every platform that we have. So we'll need to be thoughtful about where we place things to be able to make sure we're capturing the pollutants of concern in the key areas.
And you also speak about the availability of the information. Now, will the information also be available in other languages that best reflect the communities in which the data came from? Say, for example, if you're in West Fresno and it's a community primarily of Latinos and they speak a lot of Spanish, are you going to translate these things into Spanish, you know, Hmong and whatever other language that there is out there that needs to be translated to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great
So
idea.
that's a yes.
Yeah.
And my fourth question, believe it or not, you talk about phasing, and this is the initial phase. What is the time phase of implementing this portion of the program?
So that'll depend on the development of the community emission reduction program that we'll hopefully get to talk a bit more tonight about. That will outline the goals that we have set in place for this community, what the metrics are, how we're going to meet those goals, and based on those timelines that we establish, that'll help inform how long air monitoring should be happening here.
Okay. Naimeen, I saw you had your hand up. We're going to start passing the microphone around for comment, so if you can ask questions at the same time. Okay. We're going to start passing around. For new members of the committee, we're going to pass the microphone around. If you have comments or questions, please provide them and we'll write them down. And again, feel free to say you agree with something that someone's already said.
Hello.
There we go.
So I'm Nayamin with the Central California Justice Network. I have a couple of comments and suggestions. So on your slide 8, where you have the different contaminants, you just have like the acronyms. For people like me and many others here that we took chemistry maybe one semester in high school many years ago, I would recommend the whole spelling of what that acronym means, like CO, NO, just so that we are all on the same page. Also, I think that it would be important for us to get more guidance from you in order to tell you, okay, we would like for you to measure X, Y, and Z. I don't know what facility. Gave us a map saying all these stationary sources that you map or you permit. So for what I should be concerned in each facility, I could come and say, measure everything, but maybe it's not even important. So if we have more information, more data of what comes out or what are the expected emissions coming out of these facilities, and most importantly, what are the ones that have more health impacts, especially because the proximity of the sources to where residents or sensitive locations are. my comments. I also echo the comment that we should perhaps establish some sort of subcommittee that meets more regularly, because I'm just afraid that if we just do it once a month, we're not going to make dent in all the work that we need to do.
Thank you.
Just to quickly comment on those, the first question, I believe we have a glossary posted on our AB 617 webpage that does try to define some of those. Maybe we can make, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we could, when we talk about those, we could have that available and help her. Yeah. And on the second question, we do have, and Brian will give a quick update later tonight on the inventory. We do have that available where we have a map on our website. You can look at the map, look at the permitted sources, look at the emissions levels. So that's available to help kind of guide this air monitoring network design process. You can look at what are your concerns and give us some feedback on that. So that's available for the community to look at.
I was told que I spoke very fast for the interpreter, so sorry, I'm going to summarize. Estaba diciendo que sería bueno que no nada más pongan las abreviaciones de los químicos, porque muchas personas no tenemos una educación en química que podamos entender qué significa CO o NO, a menos que nos digan el nombre completo. Y él dijo que había un diccionario o glosario de términos, pero tal vez deberíamos de tenerlo visible para que nos pueda recordar. Y también le preguntaba yo que sería bueno saber qué sale de cada facilidad o cada industria, porque nosotros no somos los expertos en saber qué sale de tal compañía, ¿verdad? Entonces, si ellos nos dijeran, esta compañía puede emitir esto, esto y esto, así podremos nosotros recomendar qué deben o qué no deben monitorear en esa área. Y él dijo que en la página web ya tienen recursos con esta información, pero vuelvo a lo mismo, no estamos con la página web enfrente, eso deberíamos de tenerlos a la mano para cada junta. Y que creo que deberíamos de tener como un comité separado que pueda realmente quizás darle seguimiento, no nada más una vez al mes, pero entre juntas, para que podamos avanzar en esto del monitoreo, el plan de monitoreo.
Thank you.
All right. Just a couple technical questions. You mentioned that some of these air monitors use PM 2.5 filter based. What's the what does that mean?
Yeah, so some of our air monitoring equipment can measure particulate matter, the pollutant of PM10 or PM 2.5 in real time, hour by hour. We can see a reading. Other equipment measures it in what's called a 24-hour average, so it can draw air onto a filter sample for 24 hours continuously. Mm-hmm. Then that filter sample is sent to a laboratory where they can weigh it and see what the total weight and mass of it is.
Okay.
And that can take several months to get that information back. But that is what's called the FRM, the Federal Reference Method. The most accurate method is that filter-based method where it gets sent to a laboratory. The other equipment that we have that can give us numbers in real time is what's called Federal Equivalent Method, where it's designated as just as accurate as the reference method. It's just not that gold standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is it more expensive to have the real time or the filter based?
I think the filter-based, I mean, the real-time equipment tends to be a little more expensive. There's more moving components. They're kind of a little bit more complex in how they operate.
And are the 2.5 monitors, like the one at Roosevelt, that's real time, right?
That's real-time.
And the ones that we have, like the 2.5 monitors that we also have are going to be real time?
Right, real-time, yes.
Okay, cool. And then in terms of the air monitor system that we have in South Central Fresno, it sounds like, at least at Fresno and Garland, that site you said has the biggest, right? Like has everything. Do we have any of the monitors that you're talking about, like the trailer? It sounds like it won't be to that capacity. Is that correct?
Yeah, it definitely won't be to the level of Fresno and Garland. That's one of the most expansive sites in the state of California, from what I understand. Our trailer will be able to do quite a bit of things, but not as much as what Fresno and Garland does.
Is there any way or plan to have something to that capacity that we can place somewhere here in South Central Fresno or Southwest Fresno?
Potentially, yeah. It's a potential. We'd have to consider that and
Okay.
think about how that could happen. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of cost, would that be very cost prohibitive? In terms of like, I don't know how much that would potentially cost to have something like Fresno Garland, that kind of capacity here in Southwest Fresno.
Yeah, I really couldn't, give you a dollar number right now,
Okay.
but it would be very expensive to operate a site like that.
Okay. Can you, for the next meeting, just kind of give us like an estimate of what that would be? Just, I'll have my questions later.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Venice Curry, and this is my first meeting, so I'm happy to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you. So my first question has to do with whether or not you've linked any of this to public health data, and if so, where would we find that information? And things like infant mortality, preterm birth, how are you connecting those, or have you connected those, or are we able to make that connection since there's existing research?
Yeah, good question. I think we can follow up on that. We'll make a note of that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
My second question has to do with the historical data that's listed, you said, on the CARB website. I'm curious as to how that information's been used already, or if it's been used, the historical data that you have listed.
If it's been used in like various studies or
In any
anything?
way.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's absolutely used. I mean, we at the Air District look at air quality trends here in the San Joaquin Valley and the Fresno area, and CARB staff have done that. Researchers have used this data for a lot of different projects, so it's been used quite heavily.
So I think my follow-up question to that would be, how has it been utilized in South Fresno, specifically in either determining land use policy or improving air quality? How has it been used for those reasons?
I couldn't really speak to land use policy questions, but looking at the trends of air monitoring data from Fresno Garland, from Fresno Drummond, we look at those trends all the time, and the air quality at those stations are much better, much better than they have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So there have been a lot of positive improvements in reducing concentrations of various pollutants in those areas.
So I would love to see that data linked to public health to see
Okay.
whether or not there's a change in disease burden. My next question has to do with whether or not there's a sensor at Edison High School. You mentioned the one at Roosevelt. So I'm wondering if there are sensors at other high schools.
I know there are purple air sensors at a number of high schools in the Fresno area. The instrument that I showed a picture of earlier, that's not we have a purple air at Roosevelt, but the picture I showed is not a purple air instrument. That's a MET1 BAM instrument, which is a regulatory grade instrument. So we don't have one of those at Edison High School. It's just a smaller purple air sensor currently.
Okay, great, thank you. And then on the overview of monitoring resources, I'm curious about calibrating all of these instruments and how often that happens, and how do you ensure that the calibration is done correctly and accurately?
So to make sure that we ensure our instrumentation is accurate, we have to make sure it's compared to what's called a NIST traceable standard. It's kind of like a pyramid, if you've ever seen it before, where there's a lab back on the East Coast with the acronym of NIST, and they have the highest standards available, and they have standards for ozone, for flow, different pollutants, and so we have our own field standards that can be a more accurate measurement of ozone or airflow, and then we take those field instruments to compare that against what we have in the trailer or in the van or other air monitoring sites, and we compare the two. And if they're not close enough, we have to make some corrections, make some fixes and repairs, but if they are close enough, then that gives us confidence that the instruments that we're operating in our network are comparable against the highest, most accurate instrumentation standards. And that's something that we have to do. I don't have the details on the scheduling, but it's like every couple of months we have to make that comparison to make sure that things are looking okay.
Okay, great. And then in terms of your recommending that there be one and that it stays in that one place, I'm curious as to the amount of area that this would need to cover, whether or not this one whether or not this one van would be adequate, and is there some other place that's doing it, some other location that suggests that one is not enough and that we need to be able to cover more ground?
Yeah, good question. We'll have to consider that, and it kind of depends on the placement of your equipment. If you place it near a particular source that's really just It's really just aimed to measure emissions and pollutants from that source. That's more like a near source kind of setup. If you try to stay away from that, but you put it in a place that's more just trying to capture the regional ambient air quality of the area, that can kind of represent a more larger area. So it's really important of the placement of your equipment to try to determine the size of its scope of what it's trying to capture.
Yeah, I definitely understand the placement is important. That's kind of the question is if we only have one, is that really adequate to do what we need it to do in such a large area?
Okay.
And if it's not adequate, what are the other options for making sure that we get as much data and as much bang for our buck in this opportunity?
Okay, good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I think it's really interesting to have these roaming vans, but because the map is so red, the district needs to look at long-term installments, permanent installation of air monitoring systems to comply with federal regs for air quality, so they count. Because when you move them around, they don't count as much as they would if they were permanent. So I would hope that the budget gets increased from somewhere in the district. They need to find at least another $1 million, if not $2 million, to start implementing permanent stationary monitoring stations.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. So specifically about this question of time, say we move the van sensor to an area. What is the standard of time that would be considered by federal standards to be actionable? And let's use a benchmark question of like, if we move the van to a particular street corner, what level of increase of PM 2.5 over what time would be actionable to say, well, we need the budget to deploy a new permanent site at this thing? Do you have any guidance on that?
That's a good question. Just to comment on that, so if you follow the way that standards are met for federal standards, it's over a 3-year averaging time period. So you have to have 3 years of data, and after you collect 3 years of data, there's a method you use to calculate what's called a design value for each pollutant. And if that calculated value is over the federal standard, then that means that you may need to take actions to reduce your emissions to get you under the standard. So it takes a lot of data to make that comparison. So for the purpose of what we're doing here with the equipment, this isn't meant to be a new regulatory network. It's meant to be a community-focused network. Our equipment, we want to be able to move it around to capture emissions from different areas. That's really the intent here. So we should keep that in mind as we design this.
With some teeth, though, like to be able to take some action.
Right.
If there's an increase, to be able to say, okay,
Right.
well, there's too much crap coming out of this highway. We should build a wall around it.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Some wall joke.
Good
but,
question.
Yeah. So we'd have to leave the van in the same place for 3 years. Is that in order to do that? Is that the outcome?
I think for the purposes of the emission reduction program we're going to develop, I think 3 years isn't needed. We can take measurements over a shorter period and give us enough information to be able to take some action.
What's the shorter period?
That's something we'll have to develop together and think about that.
We get to decide?
Together, yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. So for the PM 2.5 sensors, so there's basically there's the two models. You were saying there's the filter method that takes 24-hour averages, and then there's the real-time model that reports every hour. It's just those two models for PM 2.5? Okay. And yeah, I definitely second the information about the cost. I don't see how we can decide anything really without knowing the cost of these individual models and the budget. That seems kind of essential. I'm definitely also curious about the current health impacts are, especially what the Valley's perspective is on these things. And do you have any input on what the Valley Air District's current priorities are on health impacts and monitoring? So if you got, $1 million to buy a new sensor, would you definitely buy one particular type of sensor to monitor one particular thing in terms of the health priority? Like, what is the very worst thing from the district's perspective to monitor? I know the whole health impact question is complex, but I wanted line item.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex question, but it's pretty well established that PM 2.5 particulate matter is particularly bad for people's health. So, focusing efforts on measuring PM 2.5, I think would be a good focus for this network.
Okay. And so the real-time reporting of the data, I was talking to somebody from the district earlier. So the current real-time reporting isn't exactly real-time, is that correct? It's delayed by an hour or two?
If you're referring to our real-time air advisory network, so the way it works is you get data for the previous hour. So say it's 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, usually by 4:10 or 4:15 p.m., you'll get the average of the data from that previous hour. So it's not delayed by an entire hour. It's like 10, 15 minutes after the hour you get your average for that previous hour.
Okay. For the previous hour. Okay, and then there is occasionally some dropouts with that data as well, right? There are some data points that are just missing. Could you shed any light on why that?
It happens. If we're going through our normal maintenance processes, we have to take down equipment to clean them, take care of them. We're going to lose a few hours of data. Sometimes communications fail and we lose a few hours of data. Those things come and go. And that will always be there. That's just part of our normal maintenance process.
Okay. I had one more question. So how long do we keep the trailer or the van in the same place, in your view, just from safety and practicality? Is there an upper limit?
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it, but I would recommend that the trailer be put in one spot and leave it there for the entire monitoring program here, just so that can give us a good long-term trend of pollutants in the area. If we keep moving that around too frequently, we won't be able to really compare and really know what was happening in that one location over the whole time period.
I see. Okay. All right.
Good evening. Thanks for coming and speaking with us. Is the initial phase going to be used as the baseline for our reduction program? Are these the things that we want to reduce by 10, 20, 30%, the values that we're going to get out of this initial phase?
So the data that we're going to collect here, so we're going to start collecting this data this summer. We already have some data in the area with the current network that we have that we can start with. So as we go through the community emission reduction program development, where we can line out exactly what our metrics are, what our goals are for improving air quality in the area, we can define that a little bit better. But since they're both kind of starting at the same time, we're collecting more data at the same time that we're adopting and developing our emission reduction program. The data that we collect going forward can help inform, the progress that we're making, but we don't really have a good expansive baseline of a lot of data here at this point right now. That makes sense. But we'll be getting more soon to help us form.
I'm kind of wondering if the points that we select right now are going to be compliance points, so we're just going to keep coming back to them to make sure that we're actually enacting plans and we're reducing.
Okay. Yeah, good question.
On the list of contaminants that we're talking about, are we in non-attainment for all of those?
We are currently only non-attainment for 8-hour ozone and the annual average for PM 2.5 and the 24-hour average for PM 2.5.
Okay. And with the van, it probably wouldn't. Maybe I can just talk without this.
Were you asking if it could be used nighttime as well? Yeah, it could be used either way, yeah.
Getting back to your questions that you actually are posing, I would suggest we focus on sensitive.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we're going to ask that as we pass the microphone around, you ask the technical questions that you might have for John, and then if you have specific comments in response to these questions, that you can submit them in writing, and we can provide those to all the committee members. What do you want? Sorry.
Buenas tardes, yo hablo español. Solamente quería saber si, por ejemplo, en el área que es el Málaga, todo el tiempo hay muchísimo tránsito de trailers y de como mucho tren y todo eso. Tienen demasiada contaminación porque también hay muchas fábricas y alrededor. En ese tipo de aspecto, ¿qué ayuda les darían a los niños? What help can they do for kids?
Thank you. Do you want to pass it? Thank you.
I had a quick question regarding the van. What is the best use of the van, given we're talking about stationary points most of the time, and we do have the capability of using the van that can be moved around?
That's good. Yeah. So the AB 617 program isn't just focused on stationary sources of emissions. We're also focused on area sources, mobile sources. So the van can be used to drive in different, roadways and are living possibly near roadways, take measurements to see what the impact is on them from mobile emissions to various area sources. So it can be used for a lot of different things, not just trying to take measurements from stationary sources.
Good evening to the steering committee. I'm one of the new members, and so I'm learning as we go, and I definitely would like to thank the staff for their presentation and taking the time to answer these questions. But I would like to go on the record to publicly support the statements of Dr. Vernice Curry. And I would like to further ask one other question in terms of the stationary sources. How are those sources identified, specifically with those that are the greatest polluters or offenders?
So we're going to have a presentation next on the emissions inventory specifically, and our staff and CARB staff can give an update on how we've developed that so far and get you up to speed a little bit on that topic.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question. The example that you cite in the presentation of, I believe it was the Purple Air system at Roosevelt High School, you said that was a PM 2.1 system, or?
It measures PM 2.5.
Okay, 2.5. And so I guess my question is, provided the statutory language in the bill, was that a reimbursement to the school district, or were those dollars specifically provided by the Air District?
It was a unit that we purchased ourselves and deployed it to Roosevelt.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. The question has to do with if you're using mobile trailers and vans, how will you establish a baseline or usable data? How will it be collected from that and systematized to be analyzed? And so you don't have to answer that, just maybe a rhetorical question. I'll look for the answer in data in a presentation in the future. So I'd be most interested in what research design are you suggesting overall, and particularly for the use of the mobile monitoring, and then just to present or put out on a paper the data collection and research. What is the research design basically that you're planning on doing for data collection and justifying the use of especially those mobile vendors? You can take these just as comments, and we'll look for them in future presentation or data. And you made a statement that was of interest. You said the object of this project is not to establish a new regulatory program, and if that's the case, why not? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Hello, everyone. Genevieve Gale with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. I wanted to support a lot of the comments that have already been said. Nayamin at first suggested a monitoring subcommittee, and I think that could be useful moving forward so we could have more discussions, in-depth conversations with some of our committee members, and then be able to bring that back to the larger committee. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. I'd also support Janelle's comments about having a Fresno Garland-like station in South Fresno. When looking in South Fresno, there's no publicly accessible PM 2.5 data. It's not on RAN. I know that the Fresno Pacific site did monitor for PM 2.5, but I'm under the understanding that that monitoring has stopped. So that's a question for you. Is that PM 2.5 monitoring still happening, and is that publicly accessible on RAN? And RAN is the real-time air network that the district runs and makes available.
So Fresno Pacific does still measure PM 2.5. It has since the year 2000, but it's not available on RAN because it measures it through the filter-based method. It's not real-time, so you have to take the sample, it goes to a laboratory, we get the results back. But that data is available on CARB's website if you want to look at historical PM 2.5 data from Fresno Pacific area.
Okay. So what I think this monitoring could be really useful for is, one, available to inform our personal decisions. So for instance, I like to bike to work, and I want to know if the air quality is so poor that I should not put myself in harm's way and bike. So that real-time data is really important. And I worry that because there's no real-time data in South Fresno, that our South Fresno neighbors can't make informed decisions. So I think it's really important to have real-time PM 2.5 data in South Fresno. You did say that you're adding a PM 2.5 sensor at the Fresno Foundry site. Is that going to be a federal reference monitor, and will it be available on RAN?
It will be federal reference, yes, and yeah, we can make it available on RAN so people can see that in real time. Yes.
Okay, that's excellent news. That's really excellent news. Thank you. Let's see. I also want to concur with Lisa's statement, as well as Steve and Andrew and Ed and Dan, that we need to have stationary monitors as a baseline to track progress. That's another thing that this monitoring system can do for us, is set the baseline so we know if our emission reduction plan is even working. And so if we're moving that monitor around town, we're not getting reliable data. So I'd like to concur with all of the members thus far that have suggested having permanent monitors to track progress. Let's see. In terms of the agenda, I think it's important to perhaps in future rounds start with where pollution is so we know where we should monitor. Asking people point blank what type of chemicals that we need to monitor for is confusing if we don't have the tools at our disposal. But I'd like to add, in terms of what we are monitoring, to answer your question, I would really appreciate some toxics monitoring on Central Avenue near the 99. There is a petroleum station that is one of the largest petroleum terminals in the San Joaquin Valley. And we know, air quality advocates know, that petroleum terminals or storage tanks often let out benzene and formaldehyde and other toxic gases that are known to cause cancer. And we have anecdotal evidence that a lot of people in this area have cancer, and I'm really concerned about it. And I know toxic monitoring is expensive, but to have some fence line monitoring here to see if we have benzene, formaldehyde, other toxic petrochemicals coming out is really important. Because right now that facility is not reporting its toxics, or is not reporting the extent of the toxics that we believe should be happening. So that's important, because PM 2.5 is really important, but also are those toxics that can cause cancer. My third point would be diesel. Diesel PM 2.5, that's another toxic. I know the existing diesel data for Fresno shows the Tower and Fig as having as much diesel pollution as South Fresno. And I think we can all ground truth that and say it's not true. So I think we could really improve our diesel emissions data with some diesel monitoring, and perhaps that's something that could go on the truck and we could move it around town and see where diesel emissions are highest. I think that could be really useful. And lastly, language access. I know that the district has improved and now gives out those RAN alerts in Spanish. However, I think more can be done to make all of this data information accessible to the layperson, and also to those who speak Spanish. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janice Mathurin. I'm new to the steering committee. I'm from West Fresno Family Resource Center. I have a couple of quick questions, and they may have been brought up relating to slide 16 regarding their air monitoring trailer. What is the duration of their project, the campaign?
So that's going to depend on the goals that we set forward in the Community Emission Reduction Program, which is really the document that drives the goals that we set, the metrics that we set for what our goals are for South Central Fresno and improving the air quality. And so based on what we set forth in there, that'll help define the length of the monitoring program as a part of AB 617 here.
Okay. And my other question interrelating, what is the recommended standard time span for effective measurement?
I think that kind of goes back to maybe a similar question that was asked, like how long should we keep equipment somewhere for us to know what's happening in the area? I would recommend, this is something we can think about together, but it would be nice to have something in place for perhaps at least a year to kind of capture emissions from all the seasons of the year to see what happens in the full cycle before moving it somewhere else. That's something that we can get more feedback on from the committee and see how we define that.
Okay, thank you.
Mi nombre es Hilda Villa. Ay, te la Mi nombre es Estela Ortega y nomás quisiera hacer una pregunta. ¿Los monitores móviles es seguro o cómo vamos a estar seguros nosotros, la comunidad, que midan el contaminante de partículas pequeñas que es el 2.5, el PM 2.5? ¿Cómo voy a estar segura que lo va a medir?
So to answer that, we will have specific PM 2.5 instrumentation in our vans that measure that pollutant specifically. And so when we operate those as we're driving around or in a stationary mode somewhere, that'll give us confidence that what we're collecting is PM 2.5.
Para mí es más seguro un monitor estable que esté midiendo el 2.5 y que así sepamos que estamos todos conformes que va a ser seguro, porque un monitor que esté moviéndose de un lado para otro para mí no es seguro. Es todo. Gracias.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Mi pregunta sería para los del distrito del aire. Sabemos que que estamos hablando ahorita de la instalación de los monitores, pero al mismo tiempo, ¿qué vamos a estar haciendo o qué se va a estar implementando para reducir la contaminación que pues ya sabemos que existe y que estos monitores simplemente van a confirmar lo que ya sabemos, ¿verdad? Pero ¿qué vamos a estar haciendo para reducir esta contaminación en las áreas aquí en Fresno?
So to quickly comment on that, that's all going to be defined in the Community Emission Reduction Program document that will kick off the discussion a bit tonight and develop that together. That's going to define how we're going to reduce emissions, people's exposure to those pollutants throughout the duration of this program.
Mi nombre es Isabel Vargas. Mi comentario es, yo estoy apoyando lo que Genoveva dijo, pero también quiero agregar, están haciendo una pregunta, ¿qué contaminantes o fuentes deben considerarse en el plan de monitoreo? Yo pienso que ahorita el problema más grande que tenemos son las enfermedades como asma, cáncer, diabetes, y al parecer todo eso tiene consecuencia por los contaminantes. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que ustedes van a hacer para arreglar todo eso? Gracias.
My name is Ivanka Saunders. I know this is a community-driven process. I just feel like a lot of the work that is being put off on us as the nonprofit organizations who care about the health impacts of the community are having to do the majority of the explanations of the impacts, and that is your job to do. There should have already been a better breakdown of the pollutions and their impacts. These maps that are being included in here is from the nonprofit organizations at the table. It's not from the Air District, and it's not fair, it's not right that the district isn't doing their fair share of this type of work to truly inform truthfully what we're facing. I agree with most of the points that have been made tonight. I want to add that we have to have at least one federally regulated monitor within the growing industrial triangle area, like the one that's on Garland, that will be able to collect the data of PM 2.5, the diesel emissions, toxic gases. It needs to include fence line monitoring that is actually stationary. For residents at the table, for anyone that's new at this table, understand that if the city land use problem is already a problem that we're fighting, this is an opportunity to have the support of the federal government. And so if we have federally regulated monitors, it's going to force the city to do right if they have not done so already with the land use situation. It supersedes them, right? And so that allows us to have an opportunity, instead of doing the fighting that we're always having to fight here at the local level, to have the support at a federal regulated level. But that's only going to help us if we have federally regulated monitors. We do want monitors at a community level that can tell us what's happening as we go along. The purple air monitors do a good job of that. But if we want to see long-term change, like you said earlier, we need something that has some bite in it. So if you didn't really understand this back and forth about explanation of federal regulated versus local monitoring, that's the importance of it. As far as location, stating that it's hard to find a location, don't reinvent the wheel. We have spaces that already have some types of air monitorings or any sensitive receptors, schools, medical clinics, Clinica Sierra Vista in the west side. These are areas that are worried about the health impacts. They are going to want to be willing to place a monitor in their secured lighted space using their electricity. Another point that I want to make about talking about location. Our city gives away millions of dollars in tax incentives to Amazon, Ulta, and other incoming industrial facilities that we have the right, if you're going to pollute in our area, what's your payback? What is your mitigation to the community that you're going to pollute in? These are highly lit, highly secure areas that we as a community, including the support of the district, the support of the city, can ask them or push them, if they don't want to be asked, to use some of their property to put these really important monitors on. That's a simple mitigation measure. I also am in support of having subcommittee meetings. At this point, because we've used up 3.5 months of time just expanding the boundary, we are behind trying to reach that July deadline. The Air District needs to do their responsible spot of actually helping us have additional meetings and opening it up. I know we're going to have an additional meeting to bring everybody on board that is new. That should be open as well to the current steering committee members who just need a little bit more time to absorb this highly technical stuff. As someone had said earlier, chemistry's been a while. And so the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that in the Shafter, also part of our air district, they are trying to also monitor for pesticides. There are parts of our area within this boundary that can be affected by pesticides. And just back to the beginning, instead of the nonprofits having to explain to you what are the types of pollutions that we're facing, we need to have more breakdown into what are the chemicals that are most highly affected, and start with that first, so that we know we can spend our time more effectively deciding what needs to be looked at in more detail to monitor. Thank you.
Got it? My name is Sylvester Hall. I'm president of Blue Ocean Development America and Coast to Coast Petroleum. Also have a huge multi-mixed-use project in this target area that everybody's really focused on. I'd like to know if you guys are working with a couple of organizations that put the data together for Cal Enviro Screen 3.0. I think there's the Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment and California Environmental Protection Agency. Through the TCC program, which you guys are probably familiar with, came out of Sacramento, put a tremendous mandate on the recipients of those funds to identify how they were going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our South Fresno area, because quite a few of our recipients are receiving some of those funds. So I would like to know, are you guys working with the Transformative Climate Communities program to augment the data and the information to help supplement some of those recipients in calculating their greenhouse gas remediations over the next 5 years that they're responsible to do? It'd be a great collaboration because there's an ongoing process in place already. So I just would encourage you guys to uh, collaborate with, you know, the TCC recipients and the city of Fresno and the community of South Fresno around those particular programs. Other than that, I'm glad to be on board. Don't want to see any more meetings. I don't need more than a monthly meeting with all this kind of stuff, you know. But the subcommittees are a great group to come back to the monthly meetings.
I'm Larry Taylor. I live downtown Fresno. Offhand, it doesn't look like you have enough monitors. You have one, it says 1 to 2 multi-pollution air monitoring systems. Is it 1 or is it 2? You know, and if it's 2, are they all ready to go? And then you have 2 or 3 standalone. So what do you buy them just off the shelf when you, when you figure out how many you need? And you know, for as big as an area, it seems like you might need 3 times this, you know, this many. For sighting of these monitors, what kind of power do they need? What kind of, is it a hardwire or is it a plug-in? 120 volt, 240?
For the smaller equipment,
Yes.
just a 120 works, but for a larger air monitoring
Standard
trailers,
duplex?
probably a 240 would be required. Yeah.
What about 240?
I'm sorry?
What did you say about the 240?
Oh, for the air monitoring trailer, where it's going to
Oh, yeah.
need more of a power draw, that would be required.
Yeah, that's bigger, but small ones. So, I mean, you already have these purchased. Is it 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 or 3 or 4? Or are they ready to go?
Yeah, the way we listed it that way is because all the assets that we're developing are for Fresno and Shafter. So we have 2 different communities we're working with. So we have a collection of equipment we have. So depending on how this network is designed, how Shafter is designed, that's why there's, you know, kind of some options there on how many of particular instruments we would put here in South Central Fresno.
Okay. Well, I think we need to have some of these a little more permanent. I'm sure that if you take them from one place to another, you're going to have a time for moving them and some time for recalibrating them, probably, from the movement.
Janet Gardner, I'm new to the table this evening, so listening and taking in.
My name is Santok Dillon. I'm here doing the business in this area. And I missed a couple of meetings, and I'm just learning more from people and what's going on here in this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you. Good evening. So a couple of thoughts come to mind. I know we need to kind of start somewhere in getting into the substance of this, but I got to agree. I think to be able to design or give effective input, I hope we're not designing, because I don't think anybody's here, at least I know me, I'm not competent enough to design a monitoring system, but at least providing input into it. It would seem to me that we really need to have, we're missing the discussion about what we're shooting at. What are the priority targets on this? Is it PM 2.5? Is it the ozone? Is it the toxins? You know, and based on having kind of a priority list of the things that we'd like to try to mitigate or reduce, then we could make decisions or provide input based upon what was the first priority, the second priority, the third priority. I kind of get this feeling based on the smattering of potential assets that some of it's PM 2.5, some of it's kind of toxic, some of it's kind of ozone. So it'd be helpful, I think, to have that explanation and then be able to provide some more effective input. It would seem to me, based on what we've heard, that the most destructive aspect of air pollution currently is the PM 2.5. If that in fact is true, then it would seem to me that especially given that the boundaries have expanded considerably from 14 square miles to, I think it's 41, something like that now. That 2 to 3 standalone PM 2.5 is probably on the low side, and maybe it needs to be 6 of that. And then being able to grow that would help us be able to more fully monitor the entire project area. So I think that would make some sense. There was a question about diesel monitoring. Is there real diesel monitoring, or is that PM 2.5? It's that monitoring. Is there
There's a way to measure something called black carbon, which isolates diesel particulate matter.
Okay. Is that a separate kind of monitor, or is that a PM 2.5 monitor?
It's a completely separate monitor, which we are planning to have those as well. So we'll have that ability to measure diesel particulate matter.
Okay. And when are those expected to potentially come online, and how many are you expecting to budget for?
We should have those by this summer as well with everything else, and I think we're going to have maybe 3 available for this area to start with.
Okay, so that would be another one of the assets to put on the listing. So, and then of course, there's a whole lot of question in my mind if you're doing an over-the-fence monitoring that's been suggested, or if you're doing a area monitoring, and whether you put it out in kind of a spatial grid, because what limited knowledge I do have of this, I understand that the pollutants migrate and move over time, and so if we effectively wanted to try to understand that movement, it would seem a standardized or grid layered on top of the 3 monitors that are essentially in this area would make sense. But that's probably somebody who's studied a lot more chemistry than I did. Then the other thing that I wanted to ask about, and I lost it here. I guess that'll do it for now. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a comment and then a question. I thought the district had already provided us, at least for the original boundaries, with maps that showed where the major emitters were. And maybe if we had that map again that included the new boundaries, that would be what people are looking for. I'm sorry, what I said was I thought the district had previously provided a map within the existing boundary that showed where the major emitters were, and suggested that perhaps that map using the new boundaries would be useful to what we're talking about.
Yeah, great question. We're actually going to provide an update on that on our next topic of how we're going to pull together the emissions data for the new boundary.
Okay, and then my other question was with respect to the VOC, do you essentially take one sample and then speciate it? And if you do, what are the components of the speciation?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways to do that. You can take an air measurement in a sample bottle. It can get sent to a laboratory. They can go through a process to speciate that to look at all the different types of VOCs that may be coming from that source. There's some instrumentation that it can do that in real time, hour by hour, break down the VOC into its species based on what's coming out from that source. So 2 different ways that it can be approached.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we had one over here, and then we'll get to you. We do want to make sure we have time for CARB's presentation. So there you go. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos. Es mi primera vez aquí, pero me interesa mucho porque yo vivo en el suroeste. Y pues parece que está un poco olvidado, ¿verdad? No han querido trabajar mucho por ahí y está muy contaminado, demasiado. Yo tengo duda porque ahí en la Ventura y la F está una lechería y todo el tiempo saca humo y ahí cerca vivo yo. Ahí cerca vivo yo y luego ahí están las escuelas de mis niños, la Lincoln, la Gaston, Edison y no solo es la lechería, sino que está el donde matan los reses, ajá, a Garland, y luego está el Mid Valley, que ahí llevan toda la basura. A veces llegan los olores ahí, entonces sí está contaminado ahí, ¿no? Entonces, pues, ojalá y pongan un monitor ahí para que así sepamos, porque, o sea, sepan ustedes, porque de lo que yo sé sí está muy contaminado. Cuando salimos afuera huele, llega el olor. Gracias.
Thank you.
My name is Kevin Hamilton with Central California Asthma Collaborative. So I thank you for the update to bring the other new members sort of up to speed with where we are. I think we need to move this forward. I think I'm concerned that you're saying, or I'm hearing that you're going to remap data, which I'm saying that intentionally because you have data. You have years of pollution data from the existing monitoring system. We have years of reporting data from these facilities that are permitted. And in 2 meetings ago and in a previous map, you certainly showed that you have a handle on all of the permitted sources. And so all of those are in the inventory. It gives us a starting point. It isn't ground truth yet by the community, for sure. And then there's these other areas where there's emissions that the community has concerns about, where new monitoring would certainly be indicated. But we have enough information to certainly begin the planning process moving forward to create an air pollution reduction plan. So my recommendation is, and my question is, why aren't we moving that process forward more aggressively at this point? We're on a short timeline. We want to do a good job. I believe strongly that we need to see if the steering committee is interested in a subcommittee that would work on this and work at a more aggressive timeline. I know that may be a little premature in tonight's meeting, but I want to get that on the table early on versus when everybody's burnt out at the end, and talk about what that would look like. And I think we need a second committee to work on and address the monitoring gaps that residents are identifying and that we've seen as well, looking at the existing monitoring network and where we think there's probably opportunities to learn more through additional monitoring. The district has an incredible amount of really cool tech to bring to the table on this, new monitors of different type, portable monitors that can be verified as far as the data and used as part of this decision-making process, so we need to get those assets on the ground as quickly as possible. It feels like, to a certain extent, there's, and not pointing fingers at anybody directly, but a bit of foot dragging going on here, and we need to stop that and get this process moving. We're in April. We've got to have a plan by August. So, thank you.
Thank you. So as a next step, we've written down everything that you've had to say. Sorry. Yes.
I have a quick question. When you're talking about the monitoring, does climatology or wind direction, the amount of wind, get recorded at the same time that you're monitoring that? So you know what's going on atmospherically when that monitor's taking the readings?
So in addition to the pollutants we'll be measuring wind direction, wind speed at the same time in real time, so we can use that data together to better understand what's happening. Yes.
Does that count spikes, or does it average out like your 4-hour or 8-hour?
Yeah, we'll have hour-by-hour measurements of wind direction, wind speed. Yes.
So we will take all of your comments and we'll, we owe you answers to several questions about health impacts and various things, and one of those is the possibility of forming a subcommittee. So the district will convey that to them, and they will get back to the committee and start moving forward. So now Brian Clements, the Air District's program manager, is going to make a presentation on the continuing technical assessment.
Good evening, Brian Clements. I'm one of the program managers at the district, and I'll be giving a status update on the emission inventory. I'll keep talking while the our website's being pulled up, but one of the things I wanted to go over was the functionality of our website and the information we have available. As Kevin mentioned a few meetings ago, we went over the information we have about our permitted facilities and the emissions inventory we have for those facilities. We went over the area source emissions and I'm talking about the original boundary for this community, by the way. We went over the area source emissions, which are those emissions not necessarily under permit by the district, such as commercial char broilers and residential fuel combustion, things like that. We also went over mobile source emissions. The area and mobile source emissions were provided by ARB, and we're continuing to work to enhance that information and update it. Since then, and a few weeks ago when the new boundary was finalized, we've compiled all the locations of all the additional permitted facilities with the district, all those stationary sources, and they're available on the map on our website here, which is up on the screen right now. In addition to the locations of all those facilities, we also have compiled the emissions inventory information, which is how much pollution they're actually putting into the air. And the map shows the locations of those facilities, which is really the generation point of those emissions. I'll just show you a little bit of the functionality here on the map. So this is our South Central Fresno page with the map. There's a legend on the side if you want to, focus in on certain types of facilities. Use the color scheme with those markers. You can search for addresses in the search box here. You can expand the map to a full screen view by hitting that little square in the top corner. And then you can zoom in and out of the new community boundaries. And then, and then the other thing you can do is click on any one of these facilities, and it brings up information about the facility, name, the type of facility, and the emissions inventory information that we have for that facility. And so that's our stationary source information that we have available on this map. Now, one thing we're working on, and we plan to have up sooner than later, is all the other things we've been talking about, the area source emissions and the locations of those, mobile emissions, and including additional layers as well, such as sensitive receptor layers like hospitals and schools, certified daycare centers, and other things of interest, so that anyone can utilize the website and understand the emissions that are local to a certain receptor, and then that may spur on further interest. And please feel free to provide the district with any questions or comments you have about that, once all the information is available on the website. And the other thing that's available now, so that's the map functionality. Also, if we can go back a page here, available on each of the community websites is a compilation of all the emissions. And for now, the permitted facilities with their emission inventories are available. And we have them split here. For NOx, VOCs, PM 2.5. Toxics will be coming shortly. But if you click on any one of those, it opens up a document with a full table and a compilation of all those emissions. And again, we'll also want to have summaries of some of the other types of pollution, area, and mobile sources as well. And that's an example for NOx emissions there. So just so that everybody knows where the emissions information is that we have for our facilities on the website and the functionality of the website tool. That's the update that I have for our permitted facilities. ARB is here to do the second half of the presentation. They give a status update on the work that's being done on the area source and mobile emissions. So I'll pass that to Alejandra. All the emissions information, there's a separate Spanish document, and it has all the descriptions of the facilities and everything in Spanish. Yeah.
So thank you, by the way. We always appreciate these assets, and I think that's going to be extremely useful. You did mention that you wanted to layer in sensitive receptors and other data. I just want to point you to Joe Prado and his team at the Department of Public Health and the Fresno County Health Improvement Program project. We have built a health priority index map, and it's built on our 10.3 software, on the software it needs to be. And it has all of those locations mapped for you. And they are more than happy to, in whatever form you need it, port that information and give it to you. So you don't have to go through anything to get that. You should take a look at it as well, because it maps a lot of other concerns, including health problems that are most likely to be in some of these communities at high levels. So that's already done for the whole county of Fresno. This is a big project. We spent 4 years doing it, and it's run by the County Department of Public Health and housed by them. So please take advantage of that asset. And again, let's shave some time off of this website development and get that data in there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll take a look at that.
I'll make my comment quick so Carv can speak. Thank you for putting this on the website. It looks like it took a lot of work. I do see it as a first step. The markers are not sized based on emissions, so everything looks the same when you're looking at it, and so it becomes very hard to read to know what's important and what's not important. And so we have created a map that's in front of everyone that focuses on PM 2.5 and some of the toxics, and we've highlighted the ones that have the largest emissions. So that would be my suggestion to the district, is to start perhaps using the size of the markers in proportion to the size of the emissions, so the map is more community friendly and readable. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll note that and see if we can take a look at it.
Hey, hello, good evening. My name is Alejandra Cervantes, and I work with the California Board. I am part of the community inventory group at CARB, and today I'm accompanied by my colleague Jenny Melgo and upper management from CARB. And I'm going to give you guys a little overview of the methodology and assumptions that we're doing to create the inventory for South Central Fresno. So we are here from at the district's request, and we've been working with them on developing the community emission inventory, so we have a better idea of what are the sources within the community, and try to make it as pinpoint them within the community as well. And we're working on having a complete inventory by the end of the month, hopefully, and presenting it to you guys in the future so we can go over it. So we're going to skip the video for today just to save up some time. But there's a link on the printouts of the slides, and you can go and look at the video, and it gives you a big overview of what we're doing in CARB to go from a regional model down to a community level inventory. Now I'm gonna talk to you a little bit. Is it on? Oh, okay. Our on-road and area sources methodologies, starting off with on-road mobile sources. So what we're trying to do is go from the regional scale down to the community scale. So we're using MPO data, which has activity and VMT information throughout the whole region, and kind of bringing it down to the local roads, which will give us information about what is the VMT that's going on in each of these roads and what are the emissions happening within those roads. Huh? VMT is vehicle, yeah. MPO is a Metropolitan Planning Organization. So for off-road mobile sources, we're doing two different steps. We're working on those sources that are in facilities and those that are not in facilities. For those facility sources, we're trying to look at all the equipment that's happening within the community and pinpoint them to those locations and seeing what are the emissions happening in the facility. And for those equipment that we don't have specific locations and they're kind of spread out, we're just having gridded information throughout the community that displays what are the emissions happening within that grid. For area sources, we're doing something similar to off-road. We're taking that gridded information and trying to pinpoint back where are these emissions happening. So some examples that are in area sources that are going back to point sources include gas stations, dry cleaners, auto body and paint shops. And for those emissions that we are not able to have a specific location, like consumer products, narrow it down from a 4 kilometer to a 1 kilometer grid to have it more specific as to what's happening in the community. So if you have any information or you have any input, recommendation that will help us pinpoint more those emissions or enhance more the inventory as to where are these emissions happening, where CARB and the district are welcome we're welcoming your comments. And here's our contact information. So right now, the data is more on a regional scale, and I will be able to tell you at a regional scale, not at the community scale. So we're developing the inventory.
We'd like to get moving to the SERP outline review, so we're going to hold questions. You're welcome to submit those in writing, or we will have CARB staff available at the next meeting to answer questions. But Jessica Correa is going to be presenting the SERP outline.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Correa. I'm a senior air quality specialist at the Valley Air District. I work in our planning department. I'm part of John's team. And I'm going to be talking with you. I'm going to do the Spark Notes version of this presentation. So excuse me for brevity, but I had the last presentation in your packet, and then I was also going to be reviewing this outline document. So let me jump on the computer over here. First, let me take a minute to say thank you so much for all of you for being here, and especially welcome to our new steering committee members. We really appreciate all of your time every month coming down here to work with us on this. So, as you know, AB 617 legislation was passed to ensure that disadvantaged communities were not adversely impacted by air pollution or left behind. That's why we're all here. CARB's Community Air Protection Program implements AB 617 in a variety of ways, including air monitoring, like you heard about from John, improved data accessibility, and partnerships with communities. That's going to culminate in this Community Emission Reduction Program, which is a plan for clean air in the community of South Central Fresno, advised by the steering committee process. So what is a SERP? The guidance on SERPs is included in Appendix C of CARB's Community Air Protection Blueprint. This outline document was based on CARB's blueprint and that guidance. And then my presentation is designed to correlate with the sections of the blueprint to give a little bit more detail, because I know there's not a lot in here right now. That's going to be kind of the process as we work through this. We're going to be fleshing out this document together with steering committee input to get a little more information in here. We are on a really tight timeline, which I'll go over a little bit later. But these are the sections of a SERP. And how are we on time? So it's 7:22. I'm going to do kind of an overview of each of the sections. And then leave you with some questions. And maybe what we can do is have the steering committee take a look at Appendix C, read my presentation a little bit more in depth, and then we'll get back with you via email or at the next meeting with some more information on this document. The first section we have is, after some introductory background, which is basically what I went over, is understanding the community. That's going to include a technical assessment, which is what Brian and CARB staff just talked about. Technical analysis to understand where the sensitive receptors are, key sources of pollution in the community, and an analysis of existing air quality programs and reducing emissions in the community to see where we are, what has our regional plan done to date, and where can we do better. Then we'll do an overview of our community partnership and steering committee process, something that we'd really appreciate steering committee input on, in addition to everything else you're thinking about, is how we can increase community engagement. This is your home, your communities. We know you know this better than we do, so we'd really like your input on how we can be spreading the message of our air pollution control programs in South Central Fresno. The section identifying community air quality isn't specifically in Appendix C of the blueprint, but it's a section we wanted to add to really highlight the steering committee's specific concerns. So we'll be highlighting sources of emission the steering committee indicates they're particularly concerned about, and then including a technical analysis of possible possible tools that we can reduce emissions from those sources with. And that's going to lead us into kind of the meat and potatoes of the SERP, which is our targets and strategies section of the outline. This is going to start out with emission reduction targets and goals. So we want to keep in mind, obviously, these are going to be health-based air quality objectives where we're trying to reduce emissions of criteria pollutants, PM2.5 in particular, and toxic air contaminants that have been shown to have adverse impacts on public health. Then importantly, we're going to be identifying targets to be achieved within 5 years. As part of the SERP process, there's annual reporting and a 5-year milestone where the district will be submitting reports to CARB on the programs that are implemented as a part of this process. And then we will include numerical goals for mobile, stationary, and area-wide sources of criteria air pollutants, including compliance goals, goals for deploying or implementing projects in the community, and then measurable goals for reducing exposure for sensitive receptor locations. So they're going to be outlined as a part of this process. We'll work with the steering committee to kind of come up with those goals, and then they're going to be documented in this document so we can kind of measure how we're doing going forward. Then the kind of the most important part. Okay, I gotta slow down here for translation, but still keep it speedy, guys, sorry. So the most important part of this is going to be the pollution reduction strategies. So that can be either incentives funding. There's quite a bit of money available to the community, as you know. So incentive strategies are really going to have a huge impact for the residents of Shafter. We'll also be talking about regulatory strategies, way to mitigate the impacts of pollution on sensitive sources such as schools. This might include funding for installing filters at schools, work that we can do in combination with other agencies like the city for land use or CARB for transportation. Importantly, there's an implementation schedule, so we'll be kind of on a schedule to implement these projects, and there's accountability between us and the community for moving forward. And then there's an enforcement plan, which will include a published enforcement history for community sources of 3 years, and then compliance strategies for achieving emission reduction targets. And then finally, there's metrics to track progress. So like I said, there's annual reporting that the district will be submitting to CARB, and then there's a 5-year milestone report where we'll be measuring the improvements that the SERP had in the community, whether that's through modeling, air quality monitoring, data through the monitoring program that we're all working on right now. Things like that are going to go into this 5-year milestone report. And like I said, we're on a tight timeline. We hear you about these are jam-packed meetings, so we hear you about the importance of working with that, and we'll be coming back to the committee with some ideas on that coming forward. Important to note, in October is when the district has to forward this community emission reduction program to CARB for their approval, which means we have to adopt it in September at our governing board meeting, which is the 3rd Thursday of the month. Between now and then, we have a lot of work to do. So quite a bit of the steering committee work to date that's not focused on the monitoring plan and going forward is going to be focused on coming up with the strategies, the metrics and targets, and then fleshing out this document for submittal to our governing board. So here's our contact information, which you have. I wanted to leave you, we were hoping to get to a discussion of all these questions, but maybe what we can do is have the committee be thinking about these topics, and then at the next meeting, we'll try to facilitate a discussion on these questions. Thank you all again for your time, and thank you for your time tonight. And I can take a couple of quick questions. Not questions, okay.
Cuando leíste sobre las estrategias para la reducción de la contaminación, dijiste que ibas a incluir las escuelas, pero estoy leyendo que aquí no está. Quisiera, si es posible, lo puedan agregar.
Absolutely. So as part of our strategy development going forward, we'll be developing some strategies with the committee that we'll include in the new document. And we can absolutely prioritize that as one of the strategies. Maybe what we can do is for the next meeting, or between now and the next meeting, the district can work to come up with some menu type options with some tools that the steering committee could choose from to implement in the community. So we'd be proposing some ideas, but also open to any ideas that you guys come up with kind of as a team together as well.
Thank you. We are up against our 7:30 stop time, but we do want to provide a brief opportunity for public comment. So Cody, if you can raise your hand. Go ahead and line up and make your comments, but we do ask that you make them brief. And of course, you're always welcome to submit written comments.
Hi, my name is Thomas Menz. I live about 6 miles east of here, downwind of you all. So what you arrive at here will be having some impact on my life. I just wanted to say that the purple air monitors that have been deployed in the area do show that West Fresno, that Edison monitor seems to be a key point of the most severe PM2.5 pollution. So I think it would behoove the group to have a permanent PM2.5 monitor, regulatory BAM monitor at that location. Second, Fresno Drummond is another possible place to put a BAM monitor where the district is already monitoring ozone pollution. And from 2012 through 2013, there was a PM2.5 monitor at that location, so we know that it could accommodate one. And it's, it's another hot spot within this study area. And 3, I'm glad to hear somebody, Genevieve, alluding to the fence line monitoring, the budget from which will not be coming from the resources devoted to this project, the 70 million, but will be coming from the sources of pollution, the polluters themselves. So if to the extent that that can be taken advantage of, placing monitoring for toxics or possibly PM2.5 from the most severe sources, I think would be a great thing.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, yo soy Margarita Villaseñor. Margarita Villaseñor. Vivo en esta área de la Butler y me gustaría que esta junta fuera más rápido, echaran más ganas a decidir la ayuda que se puede obtener con todos esos estudios que yo en lo personal no entiendo nada de tecnología, pero sí entiendo que está muy despacio caminando y a mí me gustaría que los niños, yo tengo nietos y me gustaría que tuvieran un aire limpio para respirar, igual que yo, pero más que nada por todos los niños de nuestro futuro, que tengan un ambiente más limpio, que no los grandes, los poderosos, que tomen un tiempo y tomen su dinero para beneficio de las nuevas generaciones, porque realmente nosotros ya vamos de pasada y con hacer dinero y con crecer y crecer y crecer, la vida no la vamos a comprar. Y hay mucha gente que está en necesidad, mucha gente que no puede hacer nada, que está esperando por la mano del poderoso. Hay muchos niños con asma, hay mucha gente que está enferma con cáncer, no se sabe realmente qué es las causas. Y la verdad las curaciones son muy costosas y no se llegan muchas veces a la curación. Entonces, tal vez que mi comentario sea fuera de lugar o no sé, pero la única cosa es que yo necesito que en este plan se decida más pronto, se trabaje con más ganas, con más decisión y en la mejor forma de ayudar a la gente necesitada de un aire limpio, porque realmente estas casas de todas estas comunidades son muy, no se puede guardar el aire puro si tuviera aire acondicionado en las casas. Las áreas que tienen casas buenas, ok, se encierran en la casa y tienen buen oxígeno. Pero aquí es aire malo adentro, es aire malo afuera. Me gustaría de veras de corazón que esto se decidiera lo mejor que se puede y finalmente por mi parte, ustedes los grandes son los que van a decidir. Nosotros nomás nos estamos entreteniendo sentados aquí en una mesa que sí tenemos cosas, necesidades en nuestra casa de hacer. Venimos aquí esperanzados de algún cambio, de mirar que se trabaje a favor, que nos beneficie, pero la verdad yo miro muy despacio que las cosas se solucionen a nuestro beneficio y que sí son ustedes los que van a decidir bien que mal para nosotros y que nosotros, como mucha gente dice en la comunidad, no necesitamos que ir porque no sabemos de tecnología ni sabemos defendernos en ninguna forma, pero yo diría que sí, aunque no supiéramos nada, de nada viniera a nuestra comunidad. Yo quisiera que hubiera más oportunidades de estas juntas y de que la gente, la comunidad sepa, porque algo que sepa alguien, algo que sepa defenderse, algo que enseñen la necesidad de un cambio y de un trabajo para la comunidad sin pensar en únicamente crecimiento y crecimiento y crecimiento de las empresas, que a uno muchas cosas no le benefician. Los pobres seguimos siendo bien pobres y los ricos bien ricos, pero de todos modos, todos se van a morir, todos nos vamos a morir. Entonces, de nada sirve en que sea puro invertir en cosas que no benefician a la comunidad. Muchas gracias y yo les digo que tomen en cuenta a los niños chiquitos. Los babies son los que queremos que en un futuro sean sanos, porque a medida que pasa el tiempo nos estamos muriendo más pronto. Antes sabemos, pues decir en la Biblia, gente duraba 900, 800 años y de ahí para acá a llegar a 60 años escasamente la gente. Entonces, ¿qué se espera para los niños más chiquitos? Menos años y menos años de productividad que nosotros queremos, aunque no sean grandes profesionales, pero en un trabajo ahí van a hacer dinero todavía para el gobierno. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
I'd like to reiterate what Kevin Hamilton mentioned about how the 3 monitors that are already in existence have a history of data that we can consult. What is needed is new monitors in this newly identified perimeter to give us an idea of the hotspot pollutants that are being broadcast. We need new monitors to be positioned in the areas where we do know there is a high elevation of pollutants. For those who have asthma, as do I, the Purple Air monitors, purpleair.com, give actual readings. So if you need actual readings to know if you can go outside safely, Purple Air is what I use. It may be just a tad higher than what the district monitors say, and I also consult those as well, but for actual time, the Purple Air monitors are good for those of us with asthma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. We need a bicycling team. with cheap air monitors, like just there's a lot of them, like only $700 or less. And there's one for $1,000 that has all the different sensors for NOx, formaldehydes, benzene. But there's a very cheap monitor for total hydrofluorocarbons. It's only a few $100s. And I think we could find a lot around the junkyards and the refrigerated warehouses and things, and leaking from trucks and things, and clean it up easily and get something accomplished. The bigger air monitors, well, I think there's a lot of vandalism going around. They steal bicycles all the time and cut chains. But a school would be a secure place to put it because there's a lot of security around there, like Edison High, because there's bad air quality out there. And I really want to check the biomass incinerator for radioactivity because there's a lot of radiation in the wood from the water they're watered with, like often is in biomass. And there's a URAD monitor that measures for PM 2.5 NOx and has a scintillation counter that can test for alpha, beta, and gamma radiation. And it's not ready until the third quarter of this year, what I heard from the company. I just talked to them. I think sold out the other models. They're making it even better than the previous model they're working on in Europe. And you think that's too late? What time do we have to have it ready by? When are we going to start monitoring for some of these things? Is it too late? Or should I just get a regular Geiger counter? And if not, I need some help, please, to donate. I can't find money anywhere. I mean, I gave up my health insurance to find money for my air monitoring equipment. I need another jetpack, mobile Wi-Fi, because right now the company is sometimes only allowing one device per jetpack, either my purple air monitor or my computer, and one shuts off the other one. I'm constantly struggling with it to keep both of them running at the same time. And I'm taking donations for air monitoring equipment.
Thank you.
Let's see.
I'm
the
sorry to
bigger
cut
air
you off.
monitors.
We
I
have
suggest
2 more
one on the
speakers.
eastern side of North Ave. All right.
Okay, sorry. We have to be out of the room. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm Jonathan London. I'm a professor at UC Davis. I'm here with my colleague Mia Dawson. We're working under contract with ARB to conduct an evaluation of community engagement in the AB 617 implementation process. So I just wanted to introduce myself to you and let you know also that we have a survey that we'd like to ask the steering committee members to take. We can send that to the coordinator for the steering committee, but we're really interested in hearing your perceptions of how the experience of the steering committee is going. What are some of the things that are working well? What are some things that haven't worked as well? Your ideas of how to improve it. And that's going to be used to help feed that information back to the Air District and to ARB as they're continuing to assess and improve the process. So just wanted to let you know that we're doing that. If you get an email from me, Jonathan London, that's what we're looking to achieve. So thanks so much, and we'll be here afterwards if anyone has any questions about the evaluation.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aidan Smith. I work for the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. A couple points. To Ivanka's point, on the slide that said, here are the things we're interested in measuring, I didn't see pesticides on there at all, and I think that's a pretty big gap. Another point, real quick, was that there was talk of this being a community monitoring system and not a regulatory monitoring system. But my understanding is that's something that the steering committee should talk about and discuss and decide upon instead of just putting that forward from the beginning. And then on that same point, my understanding is that, or one way to use this time effectively would be to have the steering committee really set the goals and the purpose. And I felt like tonight, Mr. London, I'm glad you're here because I have a lot of thoughts on this meeting and how it's been run. But, you know, why are we getting kind of bogged down in minutia, technical, you know, elements about what voltage is needed or how we cite something. That seems like that's the Air District's job, and that the steering committee should be saying, here are our priorities, here's how we want to steer the process. And so I'm kind of confused as to like what the Air District's approach to this is. And then, yeah, finally, we've had a lot of meetings that have gone way over time. And I'm concerned that there doesn't really like a learning process that I see anyways from the Air District's perspective. Like, are you guys looking at these meetings and saying like, how can we end on time? How can we like fix this process? I don't see this kind of being an iterative thing. It seems like we're coming up against the same issues. So again, for others who have comments, Mr. London, I'm glad you're here because we need to fix this process.
Thank you. Well, with that, we'll conclude tonight's meeting. Oh. Okay. One more, Cody.
Bueno, bien rapidito, muchas gracias por venir, ¿verdad? Por escucharnos y por los comentarios. Nada más quiero pedir si pudieran hacer las juntas a las 6 de la tarde, si se puede, por cuestiones de trabajo, me interesó mucho venir. Ojalá y lo puedan hacer y pues también una sugerencia, ¿verdad? Cuando alguien habla, pienso que les tienen que dar nada más como 3-4 minutos y no más, para que así todos tengamos la oportunidad de decir pues lo que pensamos, ¿verdad? Y pues muchas gracias.
And I just want to say that I echo that motion because the meetings were at 6. Nobody asked us, and we just find out today that the meeting was pushed to 5. People are working. Residents are here without a pay, and they cannot make it at 5 or 5:30 because otherwise they are walking in late because there's no way for them to, miss a day of their work or get off work earlier. So I don't even know which idea was that, but that was not a good idea. We are supposed to take decisions by voting, and we were never consulted about that.
We did talk about it at the last meeting.
I wasn't here,
but we will do a better job communicating. Thank you, everybody.